future doesn't have to be like that. If you step on in to the secret kindergarten, showing you that your young children hold the key to understanding the universe, understanding the self, and therefore they hold the key to human freedom. Your child is the gatekeeper. Only you can open the gate, and the secret kindergarten is going to show you how.
Welcome to the Secret Kindergarten, Grown Ups Edition, and I'm your host, Gino, as in G. No. And my very special guest today, David Wilcox, from Better Late Than Never podcast. How's it going?
Good, Gino. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And please just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do with your podcast.
Well, I'm from, like I said in my podcast, I'm originally from Massachusetts. I was born and I grew up there, and I was in the U.S. Army for 17 years, and the COVID thing was what woke me up to what the Army really was, and I had found myself with I was still working, but I found myself with a bunch of free time on my hands, and that's where I started learning about natural law and what the occult actually is, and then going from there. Like I found the Mark's podcast, One on Earth is Happening, and the work of a few other people, and just the free time that I had, I just spent researching and digesting stuff and learning it, and then that's what started me to got me to start waking up. And the way I forgot something. I was in the Army and I got out by not taking the jab.
Wow, that is an amazing story. Is there any more? I would just love to hear the whole thing. But can I ask, is it coronavirus? Funnily enough, look at the t-shirt I'm wearing today. It is.
Oh, yeah. I can see it's. I knew it's
the FEMA summer
about.
camp.
Oh.
Oh, there we go.
Social distancing.
Yeah. So was it the coronavirus pandemic? Was that the thing that made you start to raise some eyebrows, or were you sort of already inquisitive through your experiences in the military?
Well, I'd already I'd always wanted to. I thought of myself as I had always been like looking for the truth, but as I'd put it, looking in the wrong places, and because there are people who go into the police and military they go into it with good intentions, but they fall for some psyop, or they get it wrong some other way, and they might have, they're well intentioned but incorrect, as Mark put it in one of his presentations, and they still did the wrong thing, but they got there by either being misled about something, or like one thing I remember about high school was my high school pushed college and university nonstop, as if it were the only option. And I was so sick of hearing about college, which I'd already been thinking about the military, and I was so tired of hearing about college as if it were the only thing, that I went towards the military, which like people have said, if they got one thing if there's something you don't like, they have like some other kind of trap for those people that might want to go the other direction. And then the military, if you stay in a certain amount of time, if you want to get a certain amount of rank, you have to have some kind of college degree. So they kind of get you either way with college. And it's not that I was opposed to learning, I just wasn't interested in the whole college thing. And I knew that something was wrong with public school. I just didn't know exactly what it was until years later. I thought it was just my high school or Massachusetts, but it's pretty much everywhere that has outcome-based education.
Wow, that's that puts a few pieces of the puzzle together for me being in New Zealand. I do see how that, that option can present itself if you're trying to look to do the right thing. Growing up, dare I say, like those 80s action movies have that sort of military, that military aspect, and also a lot of, really in the 80s, like this sort of kind of moral messaging, right? Like doing the right thing and for God and country, and and I can see how that rhetoric can, and then, the masculine taking action and doing right physically, can, suck people in. But I gotta say, I'm grateful to be associated with you and, know someone with that sort of warrior energy as yourself.
Yeah.
And if I may just share that I actually worked for a while in an early childhood centre near a military base in South Auckland, and I got my experience there from some of the young children kind of got me to sort of get a better understanding of, the difference between right and wrong and morality, even though I had been studying What on Earth is Happening podcast, Mark Passio's work, looking for some validation. I had a cognitive dissonance, and some of the kids had really taken on this warrior, justice kind of action, emperor energy to go out and want to do right in the world. But as we know, it's about what the parents know. If the parents know the difference between right and wrong, their actions will be transferred onto the kids. And I found that energy in the center was looking for validation, and that's where I knew that they really got to confirm with me about things about defending yourself and the difference between violence and physical force, causing harm or defending yourself. And also in this area of town, it was like a low decile area. It was kind of like a little bit like gangland as well. So in a way, there's a little bit of a crossover that I can see how people can kind of get swept. Young men can get swept up into that and distracted. So yeah, all the more power to you for navigating your way to where you are now. It's literally amazing. Yeah, man, and we're lucky to have you on the show. So I'll ask a little question, if I may.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
The one I've got written down. What do you think a world without guns would look like?
Okay. Well, just to reiterate for your audience, everybody has the right to defend themselves with whatever they choose under a natural law with the self-defense principle. And just to clarify, are you asking if they all of a sudden just vanished? Because it would be of course it would be impossible to just have them all disappear. But if you're saying like what would it be like if they all of a sudden were
Yeah, well, both actually. If they were to disappear, well, like you said, it's impossible, and I agree. I think the guns are just. I've seen it in the early years. Just, it's a masculine thing. That symbolism and that energy and that force and that that it's actually inherent, so it would always be reinvented. But also a world without guns, as in, with the Christchurch massacre in New Zealand, the remainder of the automatic weapons got swept up and handed back to the government. A world without guns by order of government, what would that look like?
by order of government. But well, then it would be extremely violent because the people that wouldn't follow that wouldn't turn in their guns a lot of them would be the bad people, would be like your common street criminals and stuff like that. They would still be armed, and they'd be preying on the people who gave their weapons away. And also so would the government, because the government would still have, their agents would still have guns. so they'd be defenseless, as which has happened like many times throughout history with pretty much every genocide that has ever happened. The populace was disarmed first.
That is right on point. And, just from what I'm hearing, I don't think anyone could say it like any more succinct than that. Because what I hear is, when I would hear these things and I kind of felt like I didn't agree, and then as I was working with, teaching and the kids, I started to see that exact dynamic really playing out in the centers where they have rules for not smacking. Now,
Right.
our hands are not guns, right? But they can be used to cause harm. They can be. And all the centers generally, they have a doctrine. One of the first rules they usually all come up with is to have no hitting. But the naughty kids, they ignore the rule. Just like the
Right. Yeah.
criminals will ignore the gun ban rule. And continue to go, the criminals will continue to go about shooting, while all the good people, the nice, obedient people that want peace and love and whatever they think is going to be the right thing that happens, well, they're going to become, they're putting themselves further towards victimhood.
Right. Yes.
And I appreciate you explaining that to me in a very simple way, because it makes it easier for me to understand. But I see that it really is, what you're saying really is true. And I think for, a lot of parents like mums and stuff like that, especially from Commonwealth countries that don't have, similar rights to states in America or constitutional rights, we are all fed, propaganda that, these things in the Constitution are just, inconsiderate. Promoting freedom as in a kind of freedom where you're allowed to just do whatever you want, including just shoot out the window of your car while you're driving down the street.
Right. Yeah.
And the secret kindergarten is all about getting kids to stick up for themselves, because that's where I think the potential for the heroes of the future to do good get taken away into victimhood. Yeah. So, do you happen to have a story? It doesn't have to be from your early childhood, but a story when you were younger, when you were forced to defend yourself, and what effect that had on you in your life.
I do have one, but the memory is pretty vague. But because this was, I'm not sure what they called it in New Zealand, but it was elementary school, and the I remember that the other kid was the aggressor, and we were on top of a wooden picnic table somewhere in the playground, and I ended up pushing him off the picnic table, and nobody got seriously hurt, but when he got off, well, I think he landed either on his feet or on his knees when he fell off of the picnic table because I had pushed him off. He bit his tongue, and he didn't bite it off, but not that bad. But he bit his own tongue enough to just like bleed a little bit, and that's that. I think I remember that being the end of it. And I don't think there were any adults became involved actually because we went our separate ways after that. So most likely he just went to the bathroom and washed his mouth out, and that was the end of it. But as far as what effect that had on me, I'm not sure. It obviously had some effect because I remember it, but and pretty much like most of my time in school, and especially middle school and high school, people left me alone for the most part. Like I didn't really have anybody coming at me and attacking me other than when you're a bunch of boys screwing around with their friends and that kind of thing. But that's just like kind of harmless. Nobody's really trying to hurt each other with that. But yeah, that's pretty much the one story that I thought of before coming on for this interview that I could bring up.
I love it. and I just love to hear stories like that. Maybe I was probably a bit more on the victim side of things when I was younger, so I feel kind of more, strongly about these dynamics, but my response to that is like, awesome. And I do believe that in the earlier years, I do believe that, I really do believe that karma is more of an instant kind of effect from things that I've seen out there. So, awesome. Oh, thanks for sharing that. And I've just got one more question. If you had 3 books that you would recommend to anybody watching this.
Oh yeah, I did think of 3, and the reason I recommend these particular 3 is because they aren't super long reads, and the first 2 that I'm going to mention on that list are because very few people have read them, and it's first one is None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen, and next would be Mass Control by Jim Keith. And well, the full title of that one is Mass Control, and the subtitle, I believe, is Engineering Human Consciousness. And then third would be the Kybalion. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but the Kybalion. And there's people have debated on who wrote that. It's attributed to 3 initiates, but that would be a good question to ask with other people who are doing the great work. Is who did they think wrote, who do they think the 3 initiates actually are? Who do they think wrote the Kybalion? But yeah, those are my 3 books.
Awesome. And yes, the interesting how mysterious it is, the Kybalion, for such an important work.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think in the None Dare Call It Conspiracy, will we learn a little bit more about the military industry, do you think?
Yes, I read that I think I read that probably about a year ago, and it does talk about in the military, and it talks about some of these secret societies like the Club of Rome and things like that, Council on Foreign Relations, and you can, and which is like I'd say in the United States probably more are members of Council on Foreign Relations than are not. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like politicians from the U.S. and the U.K.
Awesome. You know what? That's one book that I haven't read, but I'm now going to read it to get up to speed. Well, thank you so much. Oh, yes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and then Mass Control. Like my impression of that after reading that was stuff that I thought was only possible in sci-fi movies, and then I was like, okay, this kind of stuff can really happen and actually does happen.
Yes, and that sounds like a good book to read. One that'll rattle the old cage, eh?
Yeah, it definitely will.
Oh, awesome. Well, I really appreciate you sharing some of your story and, yeah, talking about something that, for me, I find really difficult to talk about. So you've kind of made my life a little bit easier for me to be able to share this knowledge with other people that are a bit funny about the old, physical force versus violence kind of, view.
Right. Yeah.
So I really, really appreciate it. And, David, would you like to let the audience know about, where we can find your work?
Yes, it's I think probably the simplest way to find it is I don't have, like I was saying, I use Captivate I'd use Captivate to put it out there. There's only 3 episodes now, but there will be more because I'm gonna have to do more reading before I do what I'm going to talk about next. And but it's called Better Late Than Never, and you can, I think, yeah, I use Captivate to distribute it. I think that sends it out to all major podcast apps, but people can follow me on Twitter if they want to. On because I've had a link to that on there. It's at MA Nobody 7 is my handle.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And
And
I'll
as
put.
I
Oh,
improve
yeah.
on it, as I improve on it, I'll get like better at having more ways to find it, which is why I took that class that we're all here taking.
Yes, how to become the true media. Even this interview
Yes.
has me flexing some of those skills where your face is there and my face is here. I
Right.
managed to
Yeah.
figure it out. And I recommend to everybody to check out anybody watching this, people with families especially, to look at David's work. He said he's only got 3 episodes, but they are good. They are good, and I'm really looking forward to the next ones. And it's some information about, historical information about World War One, I believe.
Yes, because it was the book by Smedley Butler. It was and you can that can be read in that was War as a Racket, and that can be read in an afternoon or in a morning because it was both a book and a speech. And Smedley Butler was a general in the U.S. Marine Corps, and he was writing that in the interwar years. He had experienced World War I, and he was taking a look at what was going on in the world, and was writing in between World War I and World War II. And he wrote in very easy to understand terms.
Super awesome. Super important. So I recommend everybody watching this, especially if you have young children, young boys, to check out David's work because it's very important to, we want the young children, with the warrior energy, those young boys with all that male energy, to be directing that in an appropriate way, not to get sucked up into the military industrial complex to be used for murder and money, but to be used for protecting families, communities, and fighting for freedom when need be. So, David, thank you so much, and I hope to catch up with you again soon.
Oh, and thank you. That was very well put. How you just said that last bit.
An inspired moment. Cheers, David.
All right, bye.